Hello and welcome back to the Xamarin Forms tutorial where we work on a time tracker app. I'm Patrick and this is the Let's Create series. In this episode we will move away from the time clock page, start working on the summary page where we can start to style up our page and make sure each of our cards are displaying the proper data. With our mock statement service we can head back over to the summary page model and we see that we are receiving those and capturing them in our binded property of statements, and our page is using them in a list view. But what if we want our actual view cell to be something a little more decorated than just this simple stack layout with two labels? So let's go ahead and make a view for a pay statement. So we'll head up to our project explorer, and then in the shared project I will head over to views, and then I'll add a new file, and this will be a forms file and a content view with XAML. I'll name this a pay statement view, and we can go ahead and create that. And then we can close the code behind and we can just work right in the content view.content. And what we're going to do is go over to our summary page and take this stack layout out of here. So I'll just cut it and I'm going to paste it in here. So that'll paste the whole stack layout. And now we have a basic content view that when we use it, it'll look exactly like it used to. So let's wrap this entire view in a frame. So the entire stack layout. So let's make a frame. And then we will cut the stack layout and paste it inside the frame. And we're going to change the padding, which is default to something like 20, and we'll change that to 0. And then we'll provide a corner radius, and we can do something small like 3. We'll give the frame a background color of white, and we'll let it know that it has shadow is true. So we'll break our stack layout into two separate parts horizontally. So the left part will be basically how much they've earned, so this earnings label, but we want to give it its own background. So this will be all the way to the left, so we'll cut this out and make it first. And then we want another vertical stack layout in here, so we can make a new stack layout. And in here we will have two components. So the top view will want some kind of progress bar that is a visual representation of how many hours they've worked, and then maybe a label beneath that progress bar that will show the pay period start and end date. So the first thing we'll want is a progress bar, so we can leave that line blank and we'll create a progress bar. But the next thing we want is a label. So this will be a label. Its text will be binding pay range. And now let's go ahead and make that view for the progress bar. So we'll add new file. And this will just be a simple view, so we can make content view. And we're just going to call this one hours progress view. And now we're going to want to set a couple bindable properties in this view so we can access them in XAML. So we can do that by saying public static read only bindable property. And this progress view is going to need a max value, a min value, and current progress. Instead of max value, we can just say max. So we'll say max property equals bindable property.create. And then we'll provide a name of for a public property in this class, which doesn't exist yet, but it'll just be max. And its type, so type of will be double. And then the type of for declaring type will be hours progress view. And we want to provide a default value for max of just something like 1.0, or let's do something applicable to this app. So we'll do 80.0D. And then we also want one for min. So it's public static read only, bindable property. And this will be min property. And that's bindable property.create. And same thing, name of min, type of double, type of hours progress view, and this will be a minimum of 0. And then we also want a current progress or current. So static read only bindable property current property equals bindable property.create, name of current, type of double, type of hours progress view, and this will also default to 0. And then we'll make the public properties of each of these. So public double max, and this will just get the value from the bindable property. So it'll return a double, get value, and this will be max property. And then set will do something very similar. It'll set value for max property, and it'll use value. And we'll do the same thing for min and current. And when you're done, you should see something like this. And now we can access this and bind to it from XAML, which is what we want to do. So we can head over to our progress view. We don't really want to provide anything here because we'll drop down to the renderers. So we can just close this out. And now in pay statement view, we want to import our views folder. So we can use XML-NS for the namespace and just type views. And now we can use that progress view. So we can say views, hours progress view, and we can bind to the current. And so this will be binding total. And then we can get rid of this date label because we're not going to use that anymore. And now we can make the view model for our pay statement view. So let's head over to view models and let's go ahead and add a new class. And this will be pay statement view model. And this pay statement view model will extended bindable object. And now we want to make some of those properties that we're going to be binding to. So earnings, total, and pay range. So earnings is going to be a double. So we can make the private version private double earnings, and then the public variant. Get will return our private member, and set will set it with our set property method, referencing the private version and sending in value. Total is our total hours worked. So let's go ahead and change total to total hours, just so it's a little more clear in our view model. And so now we'll head back to the view model, and that will also be a double. So we can say private double total hours, and then we can just follow the same pattern we've been using. And then the last thing we'll want is our pay range. And pay range is actually going to be a string. So we can do private string pay range and public string pay range, the public variant, and follow the same pattern. And now we can take in a pay statement as a parameter to the constructor. So pay statement, import the using, and we can just call it statement. And now we can use this to create or fill these properties, which will then notify the XAML of their change. This will be our initializer, and in the constructor we can say pay range equals, and this will be statement.start.toString, and we can provide a simple string format, so just the month and the day, and then we can concatenate just a simple hyphen, and then we'll use statement.end.toString, and then we'll also provide a year. So this will give us our pay range. Then we want to iterate through the work items for the statement and add that to our hours and our earnings. Our earnings should come straight from statement, so statement.amount, and our total hours should come from iterating through the work items. So we can just use a simple for each var item in statement.workItems, and we can just go through here and add all of their totals, which is that automatic calculation of end minus start, to our total hours. So we can say total hours plus equals item.total, which is a time span, and then we can get total hours. So this will fill all of the properties that we need for our view. We could run this now, but we wouldn't see anything for our progress view, so we'll have to drop to a renderer to create that. But now if we head back over to Summary Page, we can use this view that we created. So let's go ahead and import the views namespace. So XML-NS views equals views, and then in this view cell, instead of that stack layout, we can use views, and we can use the pay statement view. And now we're going to want statements to be a list or observable collection of those view models rather than the actual pay statements. So let's head over to Summary Page Model, and instead of this being pay statement by itself, we'll make it pay statement view model, and we'll have to import that using, we'll start getting a couple errors, but we'll resolve them in a moment. And so now we can make this a simple local variable, and then we can check to make sure it's not null. So if statements does not equal null, then we can just make our public property equals statements.select, and this can be S, and then we will just create a new pay statement view model and pass in S and make this a .toList. And so what this will do is go through each pay statement. It'll put it into this S variable that we just create, and then we pass that into the constructor of the pay statement view model, and then it'll create a big list of these pay statement view models, and we can set that to statements, and then our page will be updated. In a previous episode, we created a service for our work, so we could retrieve work items, but we never registered that to our page model locator. So let's head over to page model locator. Let's go beneath statement service registration, and let's go ahead and register our work service. We can just say container.register iWork service, and we'll also provide our mock work service, and then we can import the using, and that should take care of that. And so now we should be able to run our app, and we should see that our statements are appearing in the summary page. And so if we head over to our summary page, we'll see that we do have the current pay period estimate of 0. Payment date for this period is not being set properly, and then our pay statement shows that 10 hours worked for the pay period that we made in our mock service, but this screen still needs some work. So the first thing we'll do is head back to our summary page, and we'll provide some margin in this stack layout. So we can just give it a total margin of 10 all the way around. Press save, and then we can just open our app back up, and we should see that that save should reload. And now we have, I don't know if you could see it, but there's this kind of dark border around here. The other thing we want to look at is styling up these labels. We don't want to make a bunch of changes to each of these. Instead, what we can do is go into our views folder. So we'll stop the app. We'll head over to the views folder, make a new folder inside of here and call it labels. And now we can make our version of a label. So just make a new file. And this can be a content view, and we'll just call it title label. And we're going to change this from a content view to a label. So when your files load, go ahead and change content view to label. And in the title label.xaml, we'll delete the bottom 3 lines and then we'll just close the element, and then we'll change content view to label. And so this will give us an actual label, just the same way we would have a content view. And now if we had any errors on this code behind, they would go away, and we can close the code behind because we don't need it. But now we can apply different attributes to this label, and we can use the title label anywhere we want. And then we can change those attributes, and it'll affect all title labels. So the first thing we'll do is head back to our summary page. We'll import that namespace for our labels. So XML NS labels equals labels. And then instead of this label being just a regular label for the title, we will use our actual title label. And we'll copy this and paste it on each of the title labels in each card. And now when we run our app, we will be able to see these title labels change, all 3 of them, as we update what a title label looks like. So with our app running, let's head over to titleLabel.xaml, the XAML file for our title label. And let's change the font size to something big like 35, and then press save. And we should see that our app updates all 3 of those labels. They're very large, so we're going to have to bring that down. So let's bring it down to a simple 22, and we'll save, and we'll just take another look. Another thing we might want to do is make their horizontal options center. So then we can take another look, and we should see that all of our title labels are center. We might want to change the text color. So I'll update this text color to something like slate gray, press save, and see what it looks like. And those look pretty good. We might want those to be bold, so we'll change font attributes to bold. And then when we save, we can see all 3 change at the same time, and those are looking pretty good. For current pay period estimate, we might not want to just show a dollar amount. We might want to show what the current pay period is as well. So let's head back over to the summary page, and it looks like we are trying to show current pay date range. So there must be something wrong in the summary page model. So we'll head over there, and it looks like what's wrong is we're not ever setting the current pay period date range. So when we get our statements, they keep track of a statement start date and a statement end date. And we can use those to find out where we are today and when today's pay period started and when it ends. So let's go ahead and make sure that our statement service is going to return a sorted list that sorts in a descending order. So we'll head over to the mock statement service. So we can just return an items.order by descending, and we will order it by the statement start date is fine, or end, it doesn't matter. So we can just say s.start, and then we got to make this toList so that it is of the right return type, and this will just return descending based on start date. And now back in our page model, we can grab just the last statement. So var last statement equals statements.last or default. And now this will either give us the last statement or null if there is no last statement, which means there would be no first statement. And then we can check to see, so if last statement is not null, which it shouldn't be because our statements isn't null, then we can get today. So var today equals datetime.now. And then we can iterate through, so from our last statement, so if last statement.end is greater than today, then we can go ahead and check to make sure start is before today. So we can say if last statement.start is less than today. Let's just make a method for that. So set date range, and we'll just provide a start and an end. So it'll be last statement.start and last statement.end. And the reason we're making a method is because we're going to have to call this from somewhere else again, and we don't want to copy and paste code. So let's make a private void set date range method, which will take in a date time start and a date time end, and it'll simply set current pay date range equals, and it'll be the same thing we did before. So toString, we'll add a hyphen, and we will toString the end date time, and just do the same thing as start, but add a year as well. But what if we're not in our current one? Well, we can change this to iterate through a loop and keep adding to the statement range as long as it is .end is less than today, but also only let it go for maybe 10 years. We don't want to let it go indefinitely in case there's some logic flaw on the back end. So let's give it some kind of a max. So we'll say var max equals 100. We'll just let it iterate through 100 2 weeks. So that's basically 50 months. And so then we could say var current count equals 0. So this will be our counter to make sure it doesn't go over 100. And then we can say while last statement dot end is less than today. And then we also want to make sure and current count is less than max. So while all of this is occurring, so if last statement end is less than today, then we're just going to increment our current running time. So instead of using our actual last statement dot end, we should cache that in its own variable. So we'll say var current end equals last statement end dot end. And then we can use that current end in our while loop condition. And then we can iterate through here. We can continue to go through this loop and just add 14 days to our current end and then compare it again. So we can say current end dot add days, and we'll just add 14 days. So we'll add 2 weeks. And then it'll check again. And it'll keep checking until this becomes true. Or we've tried 100 times. And if we try 100 times and it's still not good, then we have a problem. And that's where this comes in. So now we'll just say, hey, did it work? So we don't want to actually, so let's cache this. Current end equals current end dot add days. And then we want to use current end in this if condition as well. So current end and current end. And then we're not going to use last statement dot start and last statement dot end. We'll use current end here, but on the start we'll do current end minus 13, I think. And we'll have to check that math. So current end dot add days minus 13, and that should bring us back to that previous Sunday. I'll have to check. So once we run the app and we add some mock data that will give us some good test data, then we can make sure that logic is correct. So now what we're doing is we're going through and making sure last statement exists. And if it does, we're getting today. We're setting a maximum amount of times this loop can run. We're going to keep track of current count, which we haven't done yet. So let's go ahead and increment current count before we come back through. So then it'll keep going through and it'll increment current count and make sure it's less than our max. Each time we're adding 14 days to our current end, and we're checking to make sure current end is less than today, because if it's greater than today, then we're good. And if our current end is already later than today, then we have some kind of issue on the server, because we shouldn't have a pay statement on the back end yet, because the pay period is still going. So then we'll check here and we'll say if current end is greater than today, meaning it hasn't been but now it is. Now we'll just make sure not current end, but current end dot add days, and this will be that 13 again. So minus 13 is less than today, so that'll put today in this current pay period. Then we can just set date range. So let's go ahead and see if this works. So we will rerun the app, and this says it's June 19th through July 2nd, and we decided it's a Sunday through a Saturday, so let's make sure that checks out. So June 19th was a Friday, so that didn't work, and July 2nd is a Thursday. And it looks like we had a bit of an issue in our mock service. So on end, that 6/4 ended up being a Thursday. So let's change that to the Saturday. So that should be on the 6th. So let's change that 4 to a 6. And now if we rerun our app, we should see that those time frames for the pay period should be pretty much correct. So that's giving us June 21st through July 4th, which I believe is correct. And today is in between there because it's the 22nd, so that falls in between our pay range. And now we need our payment date for this period. So once we calculate the payment period here, we can just add the number of days to hit that following Friday. So if this is our day, then we can add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days, and that should give us our pay period date, so let's head over to the summary page model, and we can do that right in here. So we have the end. So now we can just say current pay period date equals end.add days, and this we should be able to just add 6 days, and that should give us the appropriate payment date, which with the pay period ending on the 4th, then our pay period should be on the 10th, I think it is. And there we go. It shows a payment date for this period is July 10th, and that's perfect. So one thing we're not doing is calculating our current pay period estimate. So we'll need another network call, a service call, to get our current work items. because this page only monitors the work items of today. And so if we head over to our mock work service, we have a method that gets just today's work async, and we need something to get the current pay period's work. Once the statement is generated, then that work will be stored with the statement, but our work service can retrieve all of this pay period's work. And that's where we'll end today's episode. If you like the content and find it helpful, feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more videos on Xamarin Forms tutorials. I want to thank you for stopping by. I'm Patrick, and this is the Let's Create series.